Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, I'm joined in by my our prospect analyst, fellow prospect analyst, Dayton Reimer. Dayton, how's it going? We got, haven't had Peter for the last couple of weeks, but next week we're going to talk about his rankings. But today we're going to talk about some trades that happened on deadline day and around the deadline. A bunch of prospects were on the move, and we're saying that there's not many good prospects trades, but it's happened a few now. How's it going?
It's pretty good. But speaking of not having Peter, you almost didn't have me today.
Yeah.
Completely forgot about the time change, being in Saskatchewan, hence the Blades, of course.
Yeah.
Completely screwed up the time that we were going to start. And thankfully, it's flexible, but oof. Everyone should be on no time change.
Yes.
We don't need it anymore.
I totally agree, especially the time when you have to jump ahead and you lose the hour of sleep, which I absolutely hate. So when you fall back and you gain the hour, that's nice. And I never take advantage of it anyway, because I always just stay up to my an hour later, so it doesn't really help. But yeah.
yeah, for sure.
All right, well, back to prospects. We're going to talk about, let's start with our the trades that happened around, I think most of them happened on deadline day. There was one, that Hanzel trade happened the day before, but let's start with that, just a little one. I mean, this was a prospect for a prospect swap, and that was Mysak, Montreal Canadiens, going to the Anaheim Ducks for a guy we talked about on the Anaheim Ducks prospect dive, and that was Perreault. What'd you think about that trade? It just seems like it's kind of a weird trade. Two prospects kind of swapping spots. Why did this happen? First question is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if it's just sort of a change of scenery, because it struck me as kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense. Perreault, like we mentioned, has a lot of potential, but he wasn't having the greatest year in San Diego. Excuse me. Same thing with Mysak, if I remember correctly. I'm blanking on his stats at the moment, but he hadn't really proven that he can be an NHL player at the moment. So maybe give him a new shot. Both are high-end prospects, or at least mid-tier. Maybe not high-end anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I think at this point, you're just kind of playing with potential.
Yeah.
It's all big maybes, and you don't really lose anything if it doesn't work out.
True. Like Mysak, 13 goals this season with Laval. 13 goals, 20 points in 48 games. Hasn't played for San Diego yet. Perreault had 7 goals, 18 points in 31 games, and has played 1 game now for Laval. Didn't have any points, 4 penalty minutes. But yeah, both weren't having ridiculously good seasons. Going to an article that Blaine Potvin, who writes for the Montreal Canadiens for the Hockey Writers here, saying that Perreault has more upside than Mysak. Mysak's more of a, he could be a good bottom 6 guy. Perreault could end up being a high-end AHL guy ceiling, where he could be a lot more. There's a lot more potential for him, while Mysak's more of a safe guy. He'll probably make the NHL, but only in like a 3rd, 4th line role. So, they both have potential to be something, and they're still really young. Perreault's a 1st-round pick. Mysak was a 2nd-round pick. Late 1st round for Perreault. So, both guys are going to have new opportunities in a new system, depending on how they're both rebuilding teams. So they're both looking for guys that could potentially contribute in the future. So yeah, I don't know. It just kind of felt like it was a weird trade. I was like, usually prospects don't go 1-for-1. It's the other way around. It's players, NHL players that kind of do that, and that's even rare. So it was an interesting trade. Both high end players in the OHL when they're in there. So yeah, I don't know. It was a weird trade, and we'll see how they do in each of their new organizations moving forward. All right, let's move to the first big trade, and that was Jake Guentzel getting finally traded, and he was traded to the Carolina Hurricanes for a big package of a bunch of prospects. Now, the three guys that were prospects that are in there was Ville Koivunen, Silly Ponomarev, and Cruz Lucius. Dayton, you want to comment on any of those guys? I mean, it was a pretty big package to go back to the Penguins, a team that we've talked about many times of being a weaker prospect pool. They've added some pretty good prospects in there. I don't know if there's any high-end guys in there, but what do you think about that one?
I'm maybe a little bit lower on the package that they got. It felt like a bunch of guys. Like they might be okay. You're not getting first liners. You might not even get second liners out of this group, but they have prospects now. And so you can say that they have a bigger prospect pool. Is it better? I don't know. I think the most upside is Cruz Lucius. He was a 4th-round pick in 2022. He's got 34 points in 35 games with the University of Wisconsin. That's pretty solid. Yeah, he does lead the team in points, which also very good. He's got a 2-point lead. Second on the team in goals. Those are both solid parts. I have a visitor. Yes, I have a cat. So yeah, Cruz Lucius, I think, is interesting. Maybe second, third line kind of winger. Koivunen is also interesting, but he was in the AHL and then just kind of went back to Finland, and it kind of seems like it's a long shot for him to come back. Former 2nd-round pick, has potential. We'll see. Ponomarev. What is it? Sorry. Ponomarev?
Ponomarev. I was at Ponomarev, but there's no Y in there. But I don't
know. Yeah, another 2nd-round pick, has potential. Did okay last year in the AHL. Hasn't had quite the impact this year. So maybe that change of scenery. Yeah, maybe you got your second, third line center. Maybe. To me, they're guys. So I don't know. They could be okay. Right now, I think it's just a bunch of names that you can say that we have now.
Yeah, right. Koivunen, I think, is the most intriguing to me if he can come back. I played 12 games last season with the Chicago Wolves, 1 goal. This season he's having 22 goals in 59 games in the Liga. That's pretty decent production in a men's league, and he's 20 years old, so you would say he's a man now. I mean, he's in that realm. 56 points in 59 games. That's really good actually for a guy, and he played in the World Juniors in 2023, 2 assists in 5 games. I think he could actually be a maybe high upside 22nd line guy, like you say. I mean, he's not a sure thing. He struggled in the AHL when he was here, of course, going back to Finland. So we'll see if this really solid season, if he can come back and look better, but we'll see. In the Penguins system, he's probably now one of their top prospects because their whole thing, I mean, it's not very, very impressive. So yeah, we'll see how all 3 of these guys do. I think Koivunen's got the most upside of the 3 in skill. Lucius, like you said, could be a safer third line guy. So it was an interesting trade. All right, the next one, Thomas Hertl, who it was very surprising that the Golden Knights go and trade for this guy, give up another one of their prospects. It was, they gave up David Edstrom, who was a 1st-round pick this past draft. I know Peter was high on him. He had I think higher in his rankings than where he went. What do you think about that one? He's the only prospect involved in that trade. There was some picks going each way as well. But Edstrom was the main prospect piece in this one.
Yeah, didn't see that one coming at all. I didn't think Hertl was on the trade block. So
Right?
to see
Yeah.
him get flipped, and of course to the Golden Knights. Like, who else is who's gonna acquire him? Yeah, he was ranked higher generally by everyone in 2023 last year. He ended up going 32nd overall. But who was it? Yeah, Craig Button had him up at 23, which does make sense for Craig. He is 6'3".
Yeah.
Craig likes its big guys. He's more of a two-way player, but he has, good offensive instincts, and he's playing in the SHL right now in Sweden. He's got 7 goals in 44 games, which as a 20-year-old, or actually he's 19, sorry. That's very solid. 19 points in that same span. Was on the World Junior team that I'm blanking now. I don't think they medaled, did they? Oh wait, no, yeah, they had a silver.
Yeah, silver, yeah.
I'm so used to Sweden not performing in the finals. They finally did. That was great. Yes. We can edit that part out.
Yeah. I mean, 3 assists in 7 games in that silver medal winning performance. I mean, that it's not ridiculous production, but he's got 19 points in 44 games in the SHL this season. Like you said, pretty good. Only 19. Yeah. The thing is like the Golden Knights, do they just not care about prospects? Like they just seem to use them as chips to get solid, established NHL players. And Brisson, I was surprised Brisson wasn't the guy going in because he's still their top prospect. And I was genuinely surprised he wasn't the name involved in this one. But Edstrom, their most recent first round pick, was on the move. So
yeah, I'd say it's a bad strategy, but it literally works out every time for the Golden Knights, and it doesn't hurt the prospects either. They go on generally to have a pretty good career elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there's a few that have struggled. Eric Bramstrom and Cody Glass are 2 that come to mind, but the rest have done pretty all right, like Nick Suzuki and others. We'll blame it on the time change. Memory's not great.
Yeah, Nick Suzuki's the biggest one.
Yeah.
They traded him for oh my gosh. See, my brain's out too. They traded, he's on Washington.
That was Pacioretty, wasn't it?
Pacioretty, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't start with a P. Yeah, Pacioretty they traded for, and I mean Pacioretty's been bounced around a few other places since he was traded. So yeah, it seems to work out for them. And they're gonna keep doing it until it doesn't, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see how Edstrom does in San Jose. All right. Speaking of San Jose, Anthony Duclair was traded and got to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Jack Thompson. Who again, this is the Lightning trading away. I'd say Thompson's probably one of their top prospects. What'd you think about that trade?
Yeah, I feel like Thompson is kind of underrated. You haven't really heard about him unless you're really paying attention. He was on Canada's World Junior team in 2022. I have no memory of that. And that's not just because I'm not doing great today. You completely forgot that he was there. Defenseman. He did manage a game this year with Tampa, but mainly been in the AHL. 32 points in 46 games. That's pretty solid. It's his second year in the AHL. So yeah, he's making progress. Got decent size, right-handed shot. I think that's a very solid pickup from the Sharks. That's especially for Duclair, who I think was just a free agent at the end of the year here. Yeah, I don't think you could have done better. It's an underrated guy that could play in the NHL as soon as the end of the season.
Yeah, he's 21. So, I mean, he's right in that realm of being what the Sharks are doing. We'll talk about them in a sec. It's funny how they're involved in these trades and they're adding prospects. So we're going to talk about them in our next section here. So I won't go talk too much about him right now. But Thompson, yeah, a very good pickup for free agent rental that Lightning may re-sign. Who knows? I mean, they've been able to re-sign a lot of their guys that they've acquired that are rentals. So we'll see where he goes. But Thompson going back to the Sharks, they got a guy that could potentially be part of their core moving forward, whatever core that is. We don't know yet. So yeah. All right, last trade, and this one's a little bit under the radar type. It's funny because I believe, Dayton, you talked about this guy, Graham Sward, in our check-in in the CHL. So that's pretty crazy. He's traded now. Traded the Colorado Avalanche for Jeremy Hanzel, another prospect. We talk about one-for-one prospects. Here's another one. What do you think about that one?
In very similar terms to the first trade we talked about. So these are two guys who are both defensemen, both WHL players, both have a long ways to go before they hit the NHL. But if they make it, that would be fantastic. It's kind of a magic beans type of trade, if you want to call it that. So Hanzel is, I think, the bigger name, or at least he's having the bigger season. He's a 20-year-old, 6'3" defenseman, like I said, playing with the Wenatchee Wild. He's got 76 points in 60 games, making him one of the highest scoring defensemen in the WHL this year. I don't remember if he is top. Let me just see if I can pick that up here quick. Yes, he still is the top, tied with somebody we're gonna talk about in a little bit. No spoilers. But yeah, he's had a really big breakout season this year. I'm interested to see what his future holds, because I think he does have kind of a long way. This is a massive jump from his previous seasons. And so that strikes me as a 20-year-old getting 20-year-old ice time.
Yeah.
And usually you get a big stats boost with that as well. But he's a smart player. He was a 5th round pick in 2022. So like he's not coming out of completely nowhere. Probably a third pairing guy in the future. And I think he would succeed at that. He's got the size. Like, I know we get annoyed with people not taking smaller guys, but sometimes you do need it. And yeah, definitely could do that. Hansel's on the smaller end. He's 6'1", but 196 pounds. He was a 6th round pick last year as an overager because he's 21 right now. Playing with the Seattle Thunderbirds, he's got 52 points in 61 games. So not as impressive, but I would say this is more consistent with what he has been doing so far. I believe I wrote his draft profile back in, might have been 2019 or 2020 when he was first eligible. 2021, that's when he was. So if you go back and find that one, that was me. And I remember seeing that he had a lot of intriguing skills. I think he's a pretty good skater. I haven't watched his clips recently, but I do remember that, he's got a decent offensive sense, and he could have the potential to hit like a second pairing left shot offensive defenseman. I think that's maybe a longer shot, but I think it's in his potential. So higher ceiling, but also could just not make it. Sword, I think, is going to make it, but lower ceiling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Colorado, they don't need guys right now. They can wait. They can wait for them. And their defense is pretty set up. I mean, young guys, maybe not. They traded Bowen Byram, so he's not in that anymore. But getting Sword, I mean, he could potentially do something. And Nashville, as we all know, has been really good with developing defensemen. So could work out. It's just like the Mysak Perreault trade. We'll see what happens in the new systems. And that was just kind of flew under the radar as a trade on the deadline day 2 there. All right. Well, I mean, a lot of guys moved on the couple days there when we were talking about, the only guy, Cutter Gauthier, is the only prospect that moved, and then the Bristevich and Yermo there. So yeah, lots of stuff happened. We'll see how they all work out. if they do in their new teams. All right. Before we move on to our San Jose Sharks farm system deep dive, I got to remind everyone of our Substack here at the Hockey Writers. We got one dedicated to all the teams. We also got the NHL and Draft Prospects edition there, and that's run by you, Dayton. Make sure checking that out. I know you just released a premium piece on Ivan Demidov, another deep dive, so check that out. I sign up for our premium content to read that. But yeah, make sure checking out all those. I know your rankings are coming out as well on that. And you also have the free version that comes out a few times a week. That gets all our prospect content throughout the website. So take a look at that. We also got our prospect profiles going to be rolling out in the next, I think, week or two. But yeah, there's going to be tons of coverage coming up for the 2024 draft. So keep an eye on that. Lots of the top prospects will get released first. So check that out and check out the Substack in the sign up link below. All right, let's get into the San Jose Sharks. I mean, we've talked about them a few times already as we started the show because they were really involved in the trade deadline. They are the third ranked farm system. They may jump, who knows, with their added new prospects. But as of this, they are still 3. I think they're probably still going to cut. Maybe they'll go 2. I don't know. We'll see, Logan, where you put them next. But they are the third rank, jumping from 13th on the last ranking. So pretty massive jump up into the top 3. Their top 5 prospects, Philip Bistad, Shakir Makamadullin, Will Smith, Quentin Musty, and Matthias Havelid. Dayton, do you agree with those top 5? And now that David Edstrom's now been added to that group, would he enter that top 5, or is he still outside of it?
I think maybe he could. I don't know who I'd get rid of though. Maybe Havelid. But it's a really good top 5. Yeah, I have no problems with it. I think they still are number 3 though. I don't know if they've quite surpassed Anaheim even with their additions.
Right.
But it's a lot closer than it used to be, that's for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the Ducks were 3 on their previous one. They've jumped to 2. So yeah, the Sharks already jumping. I think they're probably still 3. Buffalo and Anaheim are pretty strong. They're the top 2. I still think that too. But yeah, that top 5, I'd say Edstrom's probably, same thing. He could bump Havelid out and be 5th. Makamadullin has had some NHL games this season already. He's obviously still a prospect, but a lot of these guys are really high end. We'll talk about a few of them, so we won't go too much into it right now. But yeah, that's their top 5. I think maybe Edstrom gets in there as well. All right, let's go to our standouts. There's a few. I had a hard time picking one out of here because there's quite a few prospects having some good seasons. So, Dayton, I'll let you go first, and hopefully you don't take one of mine.
Yeah, we'll find out. So I highlighted 3, and I'm going to start with one that I sort of alluded to before the ad break, and that was Luca Cagnoni. So he is the other defenseman who is tied for lead in points in the WHL. And he's so underrated.
Mm-hmm.
He's a fantastic skater. He's got great speed and a real good offensive sense. He is 19, so he was just picked up last year, fourth round, 123rd overall. And he, has 76 points in just 59 games, which I think is less than Sward. Mm-hmm. Last year, he had 64 points in 67 games. 17 of those were goals. That's a great offensive defenseman. So what's the problem? Well, he's 5'9". He's very small for NHL standards. But he's got good size, like good weight. He's 183 right now, according to elite prospects anyways. And yeah, I think he's had just a fantastic season. He's proving that he is a top offensive defenseman. And Yeah, for me, that's I think the biggest standout for the Sharks. There's some other great prospects too. Will Smith's having a great year. Quentin Musty's doing great in the OHL. Dmitry Rimashevsky, he's another one that I kind of looked at, but I Cagnoni is just doing crazy things, I think. So
He was one of mine. But I'll mention the other guy soon. Yeah, Cognani he's improved defensively this season too. That was one thing I was reading. That's one thing the Sharks wanted him to do better going into this season, was getting better at defense. But his work ethic is off the charts. Very high end skill level, like you said. But yeah, defense is what he wants. And the thing is funny because I didn't know this, that he is actually represented by Bobby Orr.
did not know that either.
Yeah, he's only one of two active WHLers that he represents, and Cagnoni's one of them. And like you said, he has only talked to him on the phone, but he's never like practiced with him or anything like that. But it's having a guy that you can talk to, even just talk to. I mean, he's your agent. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, he could potentially be something. The WHL has churned out a lot of defensemen over the years, and Cagnoni could be the next one. And we've talked about it in the past what the Sharks need. Mario Ferraro is probably their top defenseman, young defenseman. I don't know how young he is anymore, actually. He's getting to be, I think he's mid-20s.
25.
So, yeah, 25. So he's getting into that prime years. They need some other defensemen coming up behind him, and Macamadulan definitely is one. Cagnoni's another one. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I found that little tidbit interesting, that he's represented by Bobby Orr's player agency. So that's pretty good. All right, one of mine. I had Cagnoni as one, but Kasper Halttunen. He is having a ridiculous season with the London Knights. 31 goals in 52 games. Not super ridiculous, really good. It's not crazy by some guys. Some guys are even more. But he's got 31 goals coming in to this is his first season in the OHL. Coming over from Finland, where he played in the Liga, 27 games last season. Of course, the World Juniors, under 18s, really good. Was captain of the under 18s, 6 goals in 5 games there. And then, yeah, with the Knights, 31 goals. He was at the World Juniors this past season as well, and was really good, 3 goals in 7 games. So he's had a really good season overall. And one thing he was noted for in his draft year was his shot, and it's being showcased in the OHL right now too. And he's actually, his timing and release and one-timer has become a bit of a thing in the OHL. And yeah, he's had crazy point streaks throughout the season. I think he may be on one right now, or he just got off one. He's actually got 4 goals in his last 6 games. Yeah, I mean, the London Knights are a wagon. They usually are. They've got quite a few good players. Denver Barkey, Easton Cowan. Those are the 2 guys that are coming off the top of my head. But he's definitely in that core group, and he could potentially be a top line guy on, with Will Smith and who's the other guy? Willie Mecklin? Yeah, I don't know. Halttunen, 2nd round pick, 36th overall, looking like a bit of a steal at this point. Could be a really good goal scorer, especially with his shot in one time. He's looking like he's developed, in the next level here. So yeah, Halttunen's my standout. I think we're going to be really surprised with what he does in the NHL. He's 6'3", 203 as well, so he's not a small guy. He's got a bit of a power forward game too. So yeah, Halttunen's my standout alongside Cagnoni there. And yeah, they've got, like you mentioned, Will Smith, you meant Quentin Musty. They've got some their high-end prospects are doing really well this season. So lots of standouts. Right. Any underrated guys you got in this system? I know Cagnoni, I guess, could potentially be rated as underrated because not a lot of people are, you say San Jose Sharks top prospects. Would he be one of them? I don't know. Who do you have as an underrated?
Yeah, a couple of guys I could mention. I was thinking about talking about Cagnani, but I think I've gone on long enough.
Yeah.
There's a couple of guys who I think should be doing better than they are, and so they've kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. One of those is Tristan Robbins. So he
Yeah.
was a second round pick in 2020, a little bit higher than most people expected, but he is a great little goal scorer. Not that little, he's only 5'11". But last year in the AHL, his rookie season, he had 38 points in 64 games, 17 goals. That's a great start. This year, he's on pace for 13 points total. I think he's dealt with a little bit of injuries. So that's sort of pushed him to the wayside. He does have the potential to be a sneaky little scorer. I keep seeing little, sorry. He's not that little. But yeah, just will need some time, I think, to get a little bit more confident with the puck and in the pro league. He's only 22, got lots of time. So not really any worries there. Another guy I'm keeping my eye on is Ozzy Weisblatt. Also picked in 2020. I think it was San Jose's pick just before Robbins. Hasn't adjusted to the AHL super well so far. He's 15 points last year, 16 points, well, on pace for 16 points this year. Also not playing a full season. Really hard worker. He has just that motor and that energy that will make him an NHLer, but it's, again, going to take some time. And those guys, I think, not doing great this year, but should be doing good in a year or two. And they will be maybe not top prospects, but within that top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with those. I'm going to highlight Jake Furlong, who surprisingly made the World Juniors team for Team Canada. He's not a high-end defenseman. Only has 3 goals and 28 points in 54 games in the queue. In a more offensive league, he's not known for his offense. He's more of a two-way defensive, shutdown type defenseman. I think that's probably why he made Team Canada, just being that. Didn't do them any good, but he had 1 goal in the World Juniors. I mean, not known for his scoring. He had 1 goal, but very high work ethic, very good defensively. One thing he was, I'm just going to double check, but I believe he's the captain of the Mooseheads. He is. He was named captain of the Mooseheads, so he's got some leadership ability. And I read the news release when he was named captain, and yeah, they all rave about his work ethic and the way that he just leads by example. One of those guys that could potentially be, Chris Tanev, Jacob Slavin, maybe not that high end, but be a guy that just you need on the team. And Ian Cole, all these guys that they may not be flashy, but you need them on your team. And Furlong could potentially be that. He had 50 points last season. I mean, he had some points, but in the queue, you can put up points pretty easy. But he's more known for his more defensive game. So Furlong's more of a little bit of an underrated guy. I don't think anyone would see him as a top prospect for the Sharks, but could end up being a really good bottom pairing penalty killer type defenseman. So Furlong's my underrated. All right, let's look at some strengths and weaknesses. Now, again, high-end prospect pool. What do the Sharks need to address in future drafts here? I mean, coming up with this, and we'll talk about their first, second round, but what do they need to address in what are their strengths and weaknesses so far here?
Well, I think one strength that they have is that they have lots of high-end skill in their prospect pool. So you start with Will Smith. He's a fantastic player, having a great season. I think 50 points in 30 games or something like that, approximating right now. But then you got Philip Bystead, you got Mook Medulin, you got Quentin Musty, and then Luca Cagnoni. Those guys all are high-end offensive skills. Like, they have a great pool of guys who can put the puck in the net or set up plays, which is fantastic, right? That's exactly what you want when you're rebuilding. And the Sharks are getting those guys. Add David Edstrom into that.
Yeah.
He's another guy who can set up plays. He's a good offensive defenseman. What they lack is, I think, defensive depth. They don't really have a lot of guys who are going to wow you on defense. Most of those guys that I listed are forwards. Cagnoni being the exception. Havlid, he's not a offensive guy. He's more of a two-way and probably projects to be more of a defensive guy in the NHL. Unless I'm completely off on that. I haven't watched a lot of his stuff, but to me, he strikes me as more of a defensive guy.
Yeah.
Mukhamadullin might have some of that offensive flair, but hasn't shown a lot of it yet. I think he could be one of their few offensive defensemen, but yeah, essentially they need more defensive depth, in my opinion. That's one area that they don't have a lot of and could address very easily in this upcoming draft.
I don't think they have a clear-cut first pairing, top pairing guy that you could say, yes, he's definitely going to be a top pairing, minute muncher. Mukhamadullin, like you said, could. I mean, he may do it. I looked really good in the NHL games that he's played this season. In his debut, he looked very solid. And he's been really good in the AHL this season. So, coming over in that trade with Timo Meier, I believe it's the Timo Meier trade. Or it could have been another one. No, it would have been the Timo
that was the
Meier
right
trade.
one. Yep.
That's right. Mukhamadullin was a Devils prospect before it. So, he was probably the centerpiece in that trade in the prospect side. I mean, they got some NHL players in there. Zetterlund's having a really good season, and he's probably has been the best guy in the Sharks, and he's not old. I mean, he wasn't a prospect that long ago. Mukhamadullin could end up being that. I do agree. I think their defense is where it needs. They've got a lot of high-end skill, some guys that could have pitch in third, fourth line. Their forward group is really good on the prospect side. It's their defense and possibly goaltending. But you're not going to get a high-end goaltender. You're going to have to hope that you get one that'll work in the future. But I think defense is definitely somewhere you can address in this year's draft. And on that note, let's talk about this year's draft. They've got 2 first-round picks in this one, and one's top 10 protected, so it may not end up being one. But right now they've got it, so we'll say they have 2 first-round picks. This 2 second-rounders as well probably won't become a first because the conditions on it was the Devils have to make the playoff. They have to first make the playoffs and then make it to the Eastern Conference Final, I believe, or something high end like that. And the Devils look like they're going to miss the playoffs. So that will end up staying a second round pick. This is an obvious, but they're going to target Macklin Celebrini at the top if they get the first overall pick, which they've got a really good chance of getting because they are tied with the Blackhawks with 39 points at the bottom of the league right now. So great chance of drafting him and adding to that already high-end skill. Who should they target apart from those high-end guys? Because like I said about the defense.
Yeah. I think at this point, they have the second best odds to get first. Chicago still has better odds despite them being tied in points. I will also make a slight correction from what I said before. Havlid is an offensive defenseman. I had not watched him very much. But he had 6 points in 7 games with the Swedes at the World Juniors. That's a pretty good puck mover.
Yeah.
So maybe not a top line guy, almost definitely not a top line guy, but could be a second pairing offensive defender. Anyways, I still think they should target defense if they end up with that second or third overall pick. And there's some fantastic options there. You can look at like Artem Levshunov, a great two-way guy who could be a top pairing. Artem Silayev.
Anton
Artur.
Slav. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Artur
Artur
Slav.
Salayev.
Yeah.
I knew I said it wrong. He's another guy, really big, but like moves like the wind.
Yeah.
Just a really, really good skater, especially for someone that at that size. Maybe you even target somebody like Zeev Boyum or Zane Perreault. I think that would be a little bit of a snake with those other two guys still on the board. But you could. Those are high-end offensive defensemen who project to be top pairing guys.
They can definitely get their top pairing defenseman in this draft. If they don't get Celebrini. If they're first overall, they're picking Celebrini. That's just a no-brainer. Because I'm not going to because I'm going to talk about Celebrini in a sec. But they could definitely pick a defenseman if they don't win the lottery. Even later on, like if in the later pick where that Penguins pick, I believe is the Penguins pick. Yes, it was because it was in the Carlson trade. They could draft another defenseman down there. What about their second first round pick? Do they pick? Because I don't think the Penguins are going to finish low enough that they're going to be a top 10. So they'll probably get that first round pick. Should they target another defenseman if they do draft a defenseman at the top?
I think if you get your top pairing guy with your first pick, you can be a little bit riskier on the second. And there's some interesting guys. You could go for another defenseman, kind of like a Carter Yakimchuk. Because it'll be lower than 10 for them to have that pick. Yakimchuk could be there. Someone could grab him by that point, though. Yeah, trying to think of some other riskier guys. Adam Jiricek, someone who could be good, but hasn't played at all this year. Pretty much, anyways. 19 games only. Take a flyer on someone like Ryder Ritchie. Be a bit of a reach, of course. But I think if you're making a second pick, you grab a reach. Someone who hasn't been picked yet and is sliding, or somebody who you really believe in. Couple other guys. Andrew Basha, great playmaker. Needs a little bit of seasoning in the minors, but could be very good. Who else? Henry Muse, another guy who's a defenseman. I mean, there's too many good defensemen. You might as well load up.
Might as well pick another one.
I'm gonna change my my opinion slightly. It's like you might as well load up on defensemen because in the top 20, there's going to be a ton.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the best players available.
Yeah.
So you might as well grab a couple and then see who's left after that.
Yeah. And there's some good forwards in the second round. They got 2 second rounders, which they'll probably keep. So it's I don't think they're trading any of these ones. I mean, their rebuild is just it's too valuable to have. You pick them. You pick these players. You keep adding to this rebuild that they're on. They're probably going to be trading a few other guys. Like Logan Couture's been in the rumors. He's been hurt a lot of the time this season. So he may be the next one on the move, and they're going to get some more picks and potentially prospects in that trade as well. So they're definitely in that realm of trading veterans and getting whatever they can that are young pieces and picks that they could further their rebuild and get back to contention sooner rather than later. And we'll see what type of core they create, because there's not really a lot. And we don't know who the core is yet. I mean, there's not a for sure. Now, Macklin Celebrini gets drafted. He's definitely the leader of that core now. Right now, I would say it's probably Eklund leading the way. Bordelot has looked really good as well. He could be part of that. Who do you see as the core right now in San Jose?
Yeah, Eklund for sure. Who else? I think when you're rebuilding, you don't want to hold too tightly to anybody unless they're like guaranteed to make your team. So for the viewers who don't know, I also write for the Senators, which is a lot of fun this year. And Their core, I think, consists of 3 guys and 3 guys only. And that's Stützle, Tkachuk, and Sanderson. And that's the only guys that they can say, no, we are not trading them. You can't have them. And you hang up the phone. For San Jose, Eklund is one of those. I'm almost thinking like maybe Mukmadulin for a top defenseman. You might not want to get rid of him yet. But like Will Smith, I think that's about it. Like the rest kind of look expendable. Maybe Bordelot.
Yeah.
But he's also somebody who I think doesn't necessarily project to be a guaranteed first liner. Maybe he's a second liner. And of course, you always need top second line centers. But maybe he's not a fit.
Yeah.
Maybe you got to move him. You move him for someone better.
Yeah.
I'd keep the core pretty small to maybe like Smith, Eklund, and maybe Mukmadulin, but that's it.
Yeah. I mean, Haltonen could end up, entering that category soon, but we don't know. I mean, once he gets into the next level of his development, into the AHL, NHL, he was just drafted this past season. So, I mean, he's got a bit more to do, probably in the OHL, a few more seasons as well. So, there's not a lot for the core yet, but I do agree with those names. I think Eklund's for sure leading it right now. But possibly Celebrini, whoever they draft this year will probably be part of that as well. Part of that too, right? So saying as well too many times. All right. Let's talk about prospect of the year. There's a few candidates for this one. We've mentioned them obviously already. Who do you got?
No surprise, Luca Cagnoni. You have somebody who is demonstrating that they are a bona fide offensive defenseman, and they're finally having the numbers to show for that. And they are playing, I think, way better than the Sharks expected when they've made the pick in the 4th or 5th round. I've forgotten already, but he's been absolutely excellent. And I'm not saying that he's better than Smith or Bysted or Havelid or those other guys that are on the top, but he has been the most impressive this year, especially when you're looking at expectations.
Yeah, he's been really surprising. I mean, you could give it to a few guys. I'm gonna give it to Quentin Musty. He's been off the charts good. He's the leading of everyone. He's the leading point getter of I believe of everyone in the system right now. So, he's been talking about the core. He could end up being part of that core soon as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few that you could say, yeah, definitely be prospect of the year. So I'm going to give it to Quentin Musty on this one. All right, let's go away from the San Jose Sharks now and prospect of the week to end our show. Who do you got as a prospect of the week, Dayton?
Yeah, I decided to pick one of the Senators prospects this time because there's so few times to highlight a Senators prospect this year. Spoiler alert, they are not coming up anytime soon in these rankings.
No, they're a while down the road.
Yeah, and deservedly so. It's a terrible pool. But there's one guy in the BCHL, Vladimir Nikitin, or Nikitin?
Nikitin, yeah.
Nikitin? Nikitin just sounds wrong. I don't know. He has been slowly kind of stealing the show in the league. He's a goalie, by the way. And he went from October 22nd to March 2nd without losing a game in regulation, which is unbelievable. Like, what is that? 5 months without a regulation loss? That's insane. And his numbers weren't fantastic during that time, He had a couple of 800s and for save percentage, a couple of shutouts in there as well. He did just lose his first game in a while. That was 3 days ago. It's unfortunate. But he's kind of showing that maybe there is some really sneaky skill in here. And I've really enjoyed trying to follow his journey in North America. It's his first season in North America. He's a Kazakhstan national. So, yeah, I'm taking this opportunity to let people know about the Senators' Kazakhstani goalie. Look at him.
Yeah. Hopefully he can do I mean, their goaltending, I mean, there's not a lot. Their goaltending needs to be better. And I think they take anything. So Nikitin could. I mean, it's obviously far down the road of saying anything about him becoming an NHL player, but anything could happen. And goalies take a long time to develop anyway. So we may not see him for a while if he does make it. Mine is Macklin Celebrini, because I mean, we've talked about Celebrini a lot on this show, but he's having a heck of a run right now. He's got 6 goals in his last 4 games. And let's do my math really quick here. 11 points in those games as well. And in the NCAA, and he's a big part of Boston University's 5-game winning streak right now. And what else can you say? Celebrini is just, I don't know about run away with the first overall, but I say it's pretty close. He's got 29 goals in 32 games in the NCAA right now, 54 points in that as too. And I'm trying to think of what the production last year Fantilli. I can quickly look that up. How much he's on for, because Fantilli had a heck of a season last season too.
Yeah, it was a big season. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but
so Fantilli had, scroll right. He had 30 goals in 36 games. And what did I just say? Celebrating at 29?
Yeah.
No, he is 29 goals in 32. So he is right there. He could end up having as good of a season as Fantilli. And I don't know how many more games are left in the NCAA season. It's getting down to the wire. And he's blowing people away. And I think he's probably the first overall pick. Dayton, do you agree with that? He's probably the first overall pick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say he's run away with it. Like, the World Juniors kind of cemented his place as the first overall. It was close before that. Now it's not, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what he's doing in the NCAA, he's just doing as well as Fantilli. And Fantilli didn't go first overall, but if Bedard wasn't in that draft, he likely would have, even though he didn't go second overall. Leo Carlson did. Fantilli had, and I'd say in a lot of other drafts, he's probably contending for first overall. Because that draft is just really high end at the top. And Leo Carlson's shown that he's definitely worth that second overall pick too. What he's done in the NHL, even though he's been load managed a bit, but he doesn't look out of place. Celebrini is my prospect of the week. He deserved a bit of a shout out of what run he's on right now with his goal scoring, because he's only had 2 games here in his last 10 that he hasn't scored in. So
wow,
he's doing pretty well.
No kidding.
19 points in his last 10 games. So not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad. All right. Well, that does it. What was that?
I just said sucks he's going to Chicago.
Right? He probably will. And then Joe Bedard, and oh my gosh, they'll have their own back to Kane Taves type thing again. Because Celebrini, I don't think he's going to be a high-end top-line guy. I think he'll be, I don't know. We'll see. With Bedard there, he wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Because they'd have a 1-2 punch down the middle like no one's business. So,
yep.
And both Vancouver guys too. Oh my god.
Yeah, I was really hoping Bedard was going to go to Vancouver last year. I thought that would have been so fitting.
It would have been. Celebrini would be too, but now the Canucks are just
Yeah.
They could end up having the 30th, or they're not gonna have anything. They don't have a first round pick. They traded it.
Yeah. No chance.
So, all
Unless
right. Well,
some Montreal shenanigans.
yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm hoping. I don't want the Sharks to get it either because they then Celebrini's in the Pacific Division, so I guess it doesn't matter. It's going to be bad
Senators.
either way.
Let's go with the Senators.
Well, Sam, let's have a team that doesn't have high odds win the lottery and get it. We'll have to just wait for that to happen. We'll see.
Yeah.
But that does it for another episode of Prospect Corner. Thanks, Dayton, for coming on. Now we're going to have Peter back next week. We'll talk about his rankings, hopefully, and dissect his latest ones and see who's entered the list, who's dropped, risen. I'm sure Celebrini's still first overall on his list. So you can check that out. It's already out, so take a look at that. But that does it for this week. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Prospect Corner. Make sure to subscribe to our Hockey Writers YouTube channel. Make sure you're catching all our new episodes, and also check out our NHL Draft Substack to stay caught up on all of our new prospects content. There's a link in the description below. But until next time, we'll see you on another episode of Prospect Corner.